G'day everyone, we're going to call to order the Lifestyle, Environment, Heritage and Resilience Committee for Thursday the 5th of February. Whenever we gather, we acknowledge and pay our respects to traditional owners, the Aboriginal people of these lands and waters, and we acknowledge all their descendants. We also acknowledge the many Aboriginal people from other regions as well as Torres Strait and South Sea Islander people who now live in the local area and have made an important contribution to our community. Great to have a list of councillors with us. It's awesome. I think we've got Councillor Gates joining us today and Councillor Fowler joining us today. And Councillor Taylor's not normally on this committee as well. Great to have you with us. Thanks for coming, everyone. I've got no leaves of absence, although I do have a text message from Councillor Castro, who will be joining us in approximately 1 hour. I'll kick off with the confirmation of the minutes. Could I get a mover for the minutes of the last meeting? Councillor Marshall, thank you very much. Is it going to lapse for one of a seconder? No, it's not. Councillor Curtis has seconded the adoption of the minutes. All those in favour? Motion is carried. Is there any conflict of interest declarations today? No? I have the forward planning schedule. Did anyone have any changes to those? No? It's great. Can I get a mover? Thank you. Councillor Gates, I'm not sure you're on this committee. I'm sorry. And you can't invoke acting mayor, and so it's just, unfortunately, I'll have to rely on one of the committee members to move the forward planning schedule. That's all right. Thank you, Councillor Wilkinson. I appreciate that. Can I get a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Marshall. All right, the forward planning schedule is on the table. All those in favour? That motion is carried. The first report we have today is about the Beach Access Program, and I believe we do have a presentation. Yeah, that's great. Excellent. Let's do it. Hey, Sal. And Mark, g'day, welcome. Yeah. You're in. Is this your first presentation?
Yes.
All right. Everyone go easy. It's Sally's first time.
Good morning, Chair and councillors. Thank you for inviting me here today to talk about the city's Beach Access Program. Before I begin, I wanted to acknowledge Councillor Marshall because he has really spearheaded this piece of work, this program, for a really long time. And a lot of the things that we're going to talk about today are because of his persistence and advocacy and dedication. So,
is that the end of the presentation? Wow.
That's it.
No, that's it. Wow. Gosh. Okay. Wow.
At its core, the Beach Access Program is about dignity and about social inclusion. My team are enormously proud of this program and of this piece of work, and we're really thrilled to be able to provide you all with an update on the evolution of the program today. It initially started about 10 years ago, so in 2016, when the city, a physiotherapist from the spinal injury unit at Princess Alexandra Hospital, and the president from Burleigh Heads Mowbray Park Surf Life Saving Club all joined together to grant the wish of a member with brain cancer who wanted to sit on the beach for the last time. The program recognises that accessibility is not a niche issue, but rather it's the marker of a high-quality public space and of the human experience. So through the program, we provide free beach wheelchairs, beach matting and supporting infrastructure, and we do that by working with partners at 8 surf lifesaving clubs and various community organisations. And more recently, through the establishment of beach wheelchair lockboxes, which we're hoping will become a permanent feature of the program. My team, Community Programs, we manage the equipment, the training, the governance, the community liaison, the internal city liaison, and the maintenance of all the assets, while the surf lifesaving clubs that we partner with support the day-to-day access of the equipment and the customer interaction. The partnership model has been absolutely critical to the success of the program. And it really reflects many, many years of collaboration and a shared commitment to inclusivity in the city. It has worked really, really well for the past 10 years. And while it does remain highly, highly valued, it does rely really heavily on volunteer reliability and availability and fixed operating hours, which has meant that in more recent years, we've had to consider ways that we can evolve the program to ensure that it remains as equitable as it possibly can. Which is where the Burleigh Lockbox pilot comes into play. So the first Lockbox was delivered as a proof of concept through the city's innovation program. What it allowed us to do was to safely test a self-assist access model before committing to it as a permanent feature for the city. The intent behind this model is that we can address the practical challenges that can often be associated with volunteer-run programs, because we know that the volunteer sector is struggling a little bit. State and national evidence is showing us that volunteering rates are declining. They've been declining over the last 10 years, and that really reflects what we're seeing here on the coast as well. So the intent behind this was to address some of those challenges. While Surf Lifesaving Club partners remain really supportive of this program and of improving beach access for residents with disability and impaired mobility, they've also been really clear with us about the constraints that they've been facing in recent years, which has mainly included volunteer availability, staffing pressures, and also the ability to be able to store the chairs and the matting, which, as you can see, they're pretty big, the chairs, and the matting comes in these really big rolls. So the lockboxes were developed to be a complementary solution to this. They weren't designed to replace the existing partnerships, but to reduce the pressure on surf clubs and on volunteers, while we could still carry out the program and maintain really safe, reliable access, and really fundamentally give residents choice. So the outcomes from the Lockbox trial were incredibly strong. There was a 13-week trial period, and in that time, we had more than 50 loan requests. And that included from people that were travelling interstate and from international visitors. And consistently, our customer satisfaction was well and truly above 9 out of 10. Importantly, the service operated safely, and our feedback consistently highlighted the value of independence, dignity, and spontaneity. So the ability for people to be able to access the beach without having to plan really far in advance or know that they had to wait for a volunteer to be able to assist them. It's worth noting as well that the pilot was delivered really without any formal promotion or paid advertising. We didn't do a broad public launch. The uptake of the trial was largely driven by word of mouth, our existing community networks, and by councillor social media. So despite that limited promotion, demand was really strong still. This tells us that there's a genuine unmet demand for this type of service in our city, and that the potential impact is actually significantly greater if the program is promoted much more broadly. So I wanted to share with you a video today that was developed, the only promotional piece that was developed for the Lockbox pilot, and it will kind of give you a sense of the program itself and how it works and how we encourage customers to engage with it.
The City of Gold Coast wants everyone to enjoy our beautiful beaches. Beach wheelchairs are now available in Lockboxes, free to borrow. The service is an extension of the city's existing beach access program. People with disability now have a self-service option to access the beach more easily. You'll find 2 Lockboxes near Burleigh Heads Mowbray Park Surf Lifesaving Club. We have 2 types of beach wheelchairs, a water wheels and a sandpiper. Beach wheelchairs and matting are available at Burleigh Beach during patrolled hours, 7 days a week, including public holidays, from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. To access a beach wheelchair, scan the QR code on the Lockbox and complete a quick form. You'll then receive a PIN code via email to open the lockbox. Please familiarise yourself with the beach wheelchair before use by reading the user manual provided. A life vest is provided inside the lockbox and should be worn if planning to enter the water. You can leave your personal wheelchair in the lockbox at your own risk while you borrow a beach wheelchair. The nearby beach matting makes it easier to access the water's edge. The beach wheelchairs are not designed for independent use. You'll need 1 or 2 companions to assist on the sand and in the water. Remember to always swim between the flags. Wheelchairs from the lockbox are for use at Burleigh Beach only. After enjoying your time on the beach, go back to the lockbox area to wash the chair down. Rinse the life vest and chair to protect it from corrosion, and make sure it's ready for the next person. There is also a changing places facility with a shower and hoist located nearby. Open the lockbox with the PIN code you received earlier. Remove your personal wheelchair and return the hose, beach wheelchair and life vest to the lockbox. Simply close the door to relock it.
We love that video. So our city data demonstrates why this program is so important. We know that more than 30,000 Gold Coast residents report living with a disability or reduced mobility. We also have an ageing population, with residents aged over 65 projected to almost double in the next 30 years. So these statistics, coupled with the incredible community sentiment and feedback that we receive, demonstrates why this program is so important for our community. I thought that I would share the most recent piece of feedback that we received just after Christmas about this program, and it came from a resident named Pauline who wrote to the Mayor's office, and she was so excited because she was able to swim in the ocean for the first time in 2 decades. And Pauline wrote to us, "On Christmas Eve 2025, I was loaned a beach wheelchair. I went for my first swim in 20 years. I can't remember a more joyful experience. You made my Christmas amazing." So what next? Building on the success of the Burleigh pilot, we're currently establishing additional wheelchair lockboxes at Ian Dipple, Miami, Nobby's Beach and Paradise Point. The establishment of these lockboxes have largely been councillor driven, with the funding for them provided through local area works. As the city's network of lockboxes expands, the focus for my team will be to move from a pilot program into a permanent feature for the city. So as Councillor Marshall and Wilkinson can attest to, having just been on a site visit with us, coordinating the program is incredibly complex. It cuts across infrastructure, cleaning, risk assurance, IT, engineering, surf clubs, community programs. And so once these lockboxes are operational, our priority will be ensuring that the service is embedded into business as usual activities across all of these areas so that it doesn't just sit within community programs. We think that the ideal future model for this program is a deliberately blended model. So it's one that incorporates the self-assist lockboxes, that includes our partnerships with surf lifesaving clubs, and also probably an additional part that leverages off those partnerships to run events and activities that promote disability awareness and also social inclusion. We are a host city on the lead up to Brisbane 2032, and as such, there's going to be an increasing expectation that our public environments are welcoming and that they're usable for everyone. The Beach Access Program is a really visible, practical demonstration of that commitment, and it's supported by such strong community feedback. So my team, community programs, and they're up there, give them a little shout out, Rose and Adam, they are incredibly excited, we all are, about the potential of this program to foster greater inclusion in this city, and we're really grateful for the continued support of the councillors and to be able to do that. And thank you.
Super. Awesome. I have some questions, if it's all right.
Please.
Yeah. Do you mind me asking, what does the beach mat and the lockbox cost?
So a lockbox and matting and a chair, we'd be looking at about $46,000.
All right. And this year, the locations is only Burleigh, or is there more than just Burleigh that have been done?
At the moment, we've got 2 lockboxes both in Burleigh, but we're establishing 4 new boxes.
Four new.
Yeah, in Miami, Nobbies, in Dipple Lagoon and Paradise Point.
Yeah. And the funding model for those, have they been funded through whole of city or through divisional?
Divisional
Awesome.
local area works.
And is the program moving forward planned to have a whole of city element to it, or is it expected that in future these programs will be rolled out by divisional budgets? How are we seeing that move forward?
Chair, at this stage, we sort of don't have any funding for more capital or more lockboxes. And as Sally said, that's sort of been initiated through the local area works. We do have an envelope in our budget that looks after our maintenance, promotion, cleaning, etc. for these boxes. We're very comfortable at the moment. We've got a network of about 6. We can maintain that within the current budget envelope. There is a little bit of flex within the budget if we do grow, that we still have enough money to maintain them. If we do grow significantly, we'd need to reprioritise a couple of budgets within our community programs to maintain
to manage the maintenance piece.
Yes. Yep.
So you guys are fully funded when it comes to maintenance, but at the moment the capital allocation is coming from divisional budgets based on the need identified by the divisional councillor in each of those areas. Does that sound fair?
Correct.
And you've got 2 working right now, 4 on the way in this financial year. What sort of visibility can you give us on next financial year? Is already planning? As divisional councillors already put their hand up for next year?
Chair, no, nothing yet. So at the moment, those 6 lockboxes are what we have and what we will be promoting.
Awesome. I got to say, it's one of those things that hearing a story about, a woman on Christmas Eve swimming for the first time in 20 years, that's pretty emotional. So I know it's hard to bring tough things to the table, but that's just awesome that someone has enjoyed the best of our city in a way that they hadn't been able to for 2 decades. Councillor Taylor, you had a question.
Yeah, thank you, and through the chair. Do you, with the lock boxes, I've got 2 surf clubs that aren't on the program, and I'd love to discuss more with the team. But do you have to liaise with the surf club, or is it solely with the local councillor? So is there a collaboration where those lock boxes are being established?
Through the chair, yes. So we do liaise as just a matter of courtesy with the surf clubs, because often we will be developing them right on that site. But primarily with the lock boxes, it's councillor driven in collaboration with my team, and then we liaise with the relevant areas of the city.
Thank you. Follow-up question. So, in other words, maintenance, there's no emphasis for the surf club to do anything with the lock boxes solely?
Through the chair, no, not for the surf clubs.
And the follow-up question is, I'd love to have a conversation with the team about opportunities moving forward, because there is a couple in my area.
So there might be one next year in Division 10.
Yeah, great. Through the chair, great.
That's awesome. I wanted to ask another question about the elderly. We obviously kind of focused on disability services, people perhaps in wheelchairs or things like that. If I had a mother-in-law who was in her 80s and had mobility issues, but just had a bit of a dream to maybe just duck to the beach in a way that felt comfortable for her, is this something that's available to those sort of people? You don't have to have a disability sticker on your car or anything like that?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's available to anyone that wants to use them, essentially. So we don't require any certification or anything when you book the lockbox. So it can be for someone with disability, reduced mobility, the elderly. They're often rented but loaned out for Make-A-Wish Foundation kids, things like that. Yeah.
Great. So there's no limitation as
No.
when you do the QR code, it's really effectively accessible to anyone in the public who has mobility issues can do that. And there's basically a trust system in it.
Yes.
We're obviously also trusting that people from the public won't be using them for inappropriate purposes.
Chair, that's correct. And we haven't had anyone do that so far, so
No, we don't.
we hope.
In the city.
Yeah.
Councillor Marshall, do you reckon, how do you feel about moving this? I mean, I feel like it's part of that. Oh, you more questions? Yes, absolutely. Councillor Munn.
Thanks, Chair, and thank you. Question about maintenance. So I understand, so the city, when things like with the chairs or the matting, we go in and fix. I'm interested in like the rollout and pack up of the matting in and amongst like just day to day, because how will the city totally take over that roll up and roll down, whether the beach profile falls away or a cyclone, or is some of it left to the clubs?
Through the chair, for the lock boxes, it will be the city. It will be my team that will take over the management of the matting. The idea is that the matting is left out during the summer season as a permanent feature, so that we don't have to take it in and out every single day, and it's perfectly safe to do so. But where there are the partnerships with the surf lifesaving clubs, they manage the matting.
Yeah. Because some of the feedback's probably more Neptune's, volunteers, ageing volunteers, it's difficult to roll that up and down. So I guess my comment would be just making sure that's sustainable. I think the collaboration, the partnership is great, but just we obviously the city has big machinery for beach services. If there's a way that we can make sure that we're doing that, I think that would be wise given the age. And I'd love to mention, obviously, supportive of the beach lock boxes, but I think we've got the gold standard lock box in Nate's room at Neptune Royal Lifesaving, which the club sort of did that out of their own initiative, which is exactly a lock box, but it's bigger, it's got the shower built in, there's all sorts of services in there, and that's running through their digital booking system. So I just wondered if there's an opportunity to bring them online with the city, with the lock boxes, so we have a consistent booking system.
Through the chair, absolutely. That's a great idea. Nate's room is really the gold standard, I think, for us and for where we want to get to. So, certainly for me, we don't want perfect to be the enemy of good as we start to roll this out, because we want to start somewhere so that people can access our beaches that may not have otherwise been able to. But eventually it would be amazing if we could all end up with Nate's rooms everywhere. I think it just, with respect to your comment about the beach matting and at Tallebudgera, we'd be really happy to have a chat with them separately and just see if there's something that we can organise through my guys.
I'd love that, because I really just want to give them a shout out, and obviously thank you to the team that going down for that launch. I think, and Councillor Marshall as well, this week or end of last week. They weeks move quickly, but what Val and Joy have done down there that is amazing, and it's one of the most perfect spots because we've obviously got a changing places facility there, so it's probably, I think, one of the best accessible locations. What they've done with Nate's room, honouring Nate's legacy, is a testament. So it's great to hear that there's opportunities to continue to collaborate.
So I haven't been to Nate's room, and I'm not totally familiar. What's the difference between the Nate's room facility and the facility that we're dealing with? Is it like a changing places in and a... Yeah, help me understand.
Would you like to...
Yeah,
I can have a crack, but...
Through the chair, we could both do it.
Yeah.
So everything in Nate's room is right there in the one spot, essentially, so that people that are wheelchair users aren't having to go a little bit further afield to use a change room or a shower or something like that. So it's all there in the one area. Also, the distance and the way that the beach is... The slope of the beach, it's just a really great accessible landscape.
Okay. Yeah. And not every beach evidently has those natural characteristics to be able to deliver something quite so perfect as Nate's room, and that was kind of the point you were making? Like perfect not being the enemy of good?
Pretty much, yeah. So there are often times where we will have to tweak our existing environments to make sure, as we're doing at the moment with some of the lock boxes, just to make them appropriate.
Yeah, great.
Do a little bit of extra work to get them up and running.
Super. Any other questions? No? Councillor, got a question yet?
No, Chair, but happy to second if in.
Yeah, I think Councillor Marshall kind of already raised his hand to move the item, and I'll have it seconded by Councillor Wilkinson. Councillor Marshall, did you want to say a few words?
Hi, thank you, Chair, and through you. Look, I just want to give a really big shout out to Sally, and in particular the two in the gallery, Rose and Adam. So just to give people some context, I've known Rose for a very long time. I've started a disabled nippers program back in 2014 and met Rose in 2016 when the city, I guess was groundbreaking and rocked up and said we're going to have matting and wheelchairs leading into the Commonwealth Games, which was for our program groundbreaking. That program now is across not just the state, country, but we've got programs in New Zealand and the Philippines. So it really helped to launch. We were, I guess a central sort of point and focus. The whole reason I'm sitting in this seat is basically for this moment.
Well, the reason why I wanted to run was in 2020, I was lucky to be a Churchill Fellow and sent around the world to find ways to make our beaches more accessible. I came back with a research paper that basically had the lockbox in it. That's what I designed, copied from other parts of the world, and that's essentially, I think I met with the chair and I met with other councillors before I ran. That's why I wanted to be here. I guess in the first 6 months, I stormed into the CEO's office and said, I need to be able to fund this somehow. We utilised the Innovation Fund, so I can't thank the CEO and the city enough for sort of, I guess, taking a chance. I was worried that Rose went on long service leave. I thought she left because I was hassling her so much constantly.
She's back though.
But she's back, and then I just transferred that hassle and stress from Rose to Adam. And at every single function I would see Rose and Adam, I'd ask where we're at, I'd email them, so I can't thank them enough for taking that chance. I do just want to share a story though, because the story about Christmas Eve is a really good one, and I tell this story a bit. There was a family that moved from Cairns. They had one daughter who got drafted by the Gold Coast Suns AFLW side, and they had another daughter and another young son, but I had another young daughter who was born with cerebral palsy, and they came to our Albatross program the year before the Gold Coast Suns AFLW side started. They'd moved here and relocated, and family were blown away by the whole setup and that we had the matting and the nippers program. And I said, how did this go? And they said, look, we've lived in Cairns our whole life, but we've never been to the beach and we can't go to the beach. And I said, it's strange, there are chairs in disabled wheelchairs in Cairns. And what they said to me was one of those things, having never had a child with a disability, didn't know anyone with a disability before I started the program, it stuck with me. And they said, look, we went to the beach once. They offered us the chair and everyone stared at us. And my youngest son said, we're that weird family with a disabled child. But when we went to Nippers, no one stared at us. No one at Nobby's thought anything different. In fact, the day that they were there, Cody Simpson was there. So the son said, I feel cool. I feel like we're the coolest people on the beach. And that sort of left a lasting memory that how isolating it is to live with a disability and a family to live with a disability, not just the person with a disability, but the whole family. So that kind of started me on that journey. That led me to hassling Rose even more than the Churchill Fellowship. And so I can't thank people enough. Like I said, this is the only reason I really wanted to run for this role. Obviously now there's other things I want to do, but at the time that was the main sort of emphasis. So thank you so much. It's like Christmas Day for me to be able to get this one over the line.
Well, it's only a recommendation, so you have to wait till full council for it to all be adopted, but that can be Christmas Day for you.
That can be Christmas Day. I'll probably talk it there as well.
And so you should. I wanted to just double check, you touched on something in your address about the Innovation Fund kind of being the catalyser or catalyst to see this thing move forward. Is there any impediment now for councillors who there's no impediment for us to allocate divisional funds for this? There's no, legislative impediment or, there's no drama. If we can basically do it by budget adoption, if we include it in our budget, there's no drama with it. Yeah. And the other 6 or the other 4 or 5 that have been done through divisional owner work, has that been done under delegation or has that been done through, how has that been done? Because I haven't seen a resolution come through for them, but...
Chair, just the transfer of local area works funding.
Okay, so there's effectively a project number and then you just transfer it across and it is what it is.
Yeah.
That's great. Awesome. That's excellent news. So good. So we have a mover in Councillor Marshall, Councillor Wilkinson. Would anyone else like to, it's obviously really important and everyone has a unique story. Councillor Wilkinson, do you want to say a few words?
Thank you, Chair. And not so much a unique story, but I just wanted to give comment if it's fine by you.
Yep.
Look, I just want to really just kind of applaud our Beach Access Program team. I think Sally, Adam and Rose, of course, your dedication and passion was evident as far as my engagement with the program and obviously looking to roll this out at Ian Dipple Lagoon. I think it's going to be something that, again, just enhances inclusivity across my community, but then more broadly across the city. And I applaud Councillor Marshall for his dedication and service in that space. I think the more inclusivity we can have across the city, I think only benefits us and strengthens us, as a community as a whole. So I applaud your work. I certainly will be supporting this officer recommendation today, and I look forward to seeing more of these roll out across possibly even Division 10 by the sounds of it and other parts of the community in the future. So, yeah, thanks for all the good work you're doing.
Thank you.
That's awesome. In the interest of not making the perfect being the enemy of good, in the resolution it says that any future expansion is subject to consideration of additional funding through the annual budget process. Would that ultimately Yeah, I was going to say, I think we need to add a divisional budget allocation to that because, if someone has a need in their community, they want to respond or reprioritise their budget mid-year, I think we should enable that to happen. So maybe with the permission of the mover and the seconder, maybe we can just say annual budget process or via divisional budget allocation. Would you, Alicia, would be enough or? And make it, just to omit the annual budget process. Yes. Go ahead, Councillor Martin.
Just a query on the future expansion. Is the intent of that meaning capital? Like the proposal there is not future expansion of OPEX and operating, right? Like divisional budgets is not, I get the asset, if there's new lockboxes, that could be funded locally, but the staff and resources that sit behind that, are you proposing that be funded through local area works? Because I don't think that will comply.
No, the maintenance would remain a whole of city matter that would be resolved through the annual budget process, but the capital allocation could be done. I don't want to stop it from being done mid-year or outside that annual budget. If a divisional councillor identifies a need in their community, they should be able to do that for this purpose, because I think it's very beach specific. It should be able to be done throughout the year.
Yeah. I wonder, Chair, whether we should mention in accordance with our policy now.
You'd have to be outside the policy.
Yeah, I would hate to be outside the policy.
Okay. I'll leave that.
Yeah. So, Mr. Chair, you could just say subject to consideration of additional funding, full stop, and then
leave it at that.
Anything extra that you want us to fund.
We can come in now, full council. So let's do that. So let's remove the words through the annual budget process and the red as well. Just remove all that and then just leave it at that. And if we need to change it, subject to advice for full council, then we can. Councillor Marshall, is that all right to adjust it in that way? And Councillor Wilkinson, are you okay for that to be adjusted that way? Did anyone want to speak against this awesome program? No. All those in favour? Motion is carried. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Sally. And you did great. First time presenting, you did excellent. Well played. And community programs team, awesome to have you with us. The next item on the agenda is the Springbrook Groundwater Investigation Final Report for 2025 and the Critical Zone Observatory proposal. And I think I'm welcoming, who's the presenter today? Is Grant or Andrew or? Grant and Lucy. Grant and Lucy. Welcome. Dr. Lucy, great to have you with us. Welcome to Chambers.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks everyone, and good morning.
Grant, you just need to press the button on the... So you see the light come on the microphone? See how the light goes on?
Thank you. Thank you, Chair, and good morning, councillors. I'm Grant Perriott. I'm currently Acting Manager Conservation Strategy, but my normal role is Principal Environment Research and Development. And I'm joined today by Dr. Lucy Reading from QUT, who has led the scientific investigation that we'll be talking about today. I'll take you through the context and the findings and implications for Council, and Lucy will talk to the science. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the Kombumerri people, the traditional owners of the Nerang River catchment, and that includes Springbrook, and their continuing connection to country. In particular, I want to thank Auntie Rosaline Best, Kombumerri and Ngugi traditional owner, and a nominated representative of the Dungan Ballin Native Title Claim Group. Auntie Rose speaks for the land and waters of Springbrook, known as Burrigan Mountain to the Kombumerri. Auntie Rose teaches us that water is not just a resource, but a living system that flows through all life. She says that people are connected, a connected part of this, forming what she calls clever water. The 5 oceans that the Kombumerri speak to include freshwater, saltwater, groundwater, and skywater. So that covers off on how science understands hydrology as well. And the biological sea, of course, water in all living things. This teaching reminds us that all waters are connected and that caring for water is a shared responsibility. The Springbrook groundwater investigation was a 4-year collaboration led by QUT and supported by the City, Seqwater and the Queensland Government. It is the most comprehensive groundwater and ecosystem study ever undertaken in our Gold Coast hinterland headwaters. The purpose of this work was to build a clear understanding of how groundwater functions and to develop a fit-for-purpose monitoring and also establish defensible evidence base to support World Heritage protection up there. Long-term water security is also an important part of Springbrook, and we also want to be able to scientifically inform our planning and policy decision-making. Today, we'll summarise key findings and then outline proposals to continue the work through a longer-term critical zone observatory. Springbrook. So this is the heart of the matter. It is the biological and hydrological heart of the Gold Coast. Its high elevation rainforests recharge our drinking water catchments, feeding the World Heritage areas and functioning as a biodiversity refuge and core habitat source for the region as a whole. If this system degrades, every downstream ecosystem from creeks to coastal wetlands is affected. It matters because Springbrook is a remnant of the world's oldest rainforest system, Gondwana. It has a 70 million year history. This rainforest once spanned the entire southern supercontinent. Springbrook now harbours at least 185 unique threatened flora species and 52 unique threatened fauna species. It is home to a living canopy of Paleo-Antarctic lineage, that is, living trees that now only exist elsewhere in the world as a fossil. The first flowers on Earth bloomed in Australian rainforests, and their ancient descendants still grow up at Springbrook alongside bryophytes, the very first land plants. Songbirds also evolved in the Australian Gondwana rainforest, and that lineage still exists today, sung by Springbrook's lyrebirds. So it can be said that flowers and song were first gifted to the world from a forest that grows in our hinterland. The 23 million year old Wollumbin Shield volcano created the fertile basalt soils, aquifers and high rainfall that sustain these forests. Springbrook sits at the climatic crossroads where tropical, subtropical and temperate species overlap. It's a triple point of endemism driving unique local evolution. So what are the conservation stakes? It's high endemism, meaning unique species that evolved here, and climate sensitivity mean early detection of change is extremely important for conservation. Groundwater sustains rainforest health and flow to downstream creeks and communities. Protecting these aquifers is essential for water security, for biodiversity resilience, and for maintaining the integrity of World Heritage values. The SGI was initiated in 2021 to address major gaps in our understanding of groundwater at Springbrook. The objectives were to establish an integrated surface water and groundwater monitoring process, develop conceptual and numerical models of the system, and to support better land use water planning decision making. The SGI involved groundwater, surface water, ecohydrology and hydrogeochemical monitoring, so fairly complex stuff. For around $500,000 investment from Council over 4 years, the City leveraged a world-class scientific investigation valued at over $4 million through partner co-contributions. The SGI was supported by cash and in-kind contributions from the City, QUT, Seqwater and the Queensland Government. So I'm going to hand you over to Lucy now to talk a little bit to the science.
Thanks, Grant. So the SGI project started with a focus on water, but was expanded to incorporate geology, chemistry, and ecology. The breadth of this is what makes the project unique. We now have a solid baseline of data, with remaining gaps to be addressed through our future work. So to establish this baseline, we have established an integrated monitoring network that includes climatic variables, groundwater, stream flow, vegetation use, all across elevation gradients. We have built conceptual models to capture our new understanding of the aquifers. And we have also built some advanced models, such as groundwater models with ModFlow and surface water models with 2Flow, even developing newer versions of these models that are fit for purpose for Springbrook. And these have been used to simulate flow and storage. More recently, the project has tested new low-cost sensors and remote technologies, and these will form the backbone of the proposed Springbrook Critical Zone Observatory. Springbrook receives more than 3 metres of rainfall annually, but the rainfall varies greatly across the plateau. Over the wet period of the last 5 years, some places in Springbrook have received up to 5 metres of rain. Because of this higher than average rainfall over the project monitoring period, the team have been unable to assess how the system will respond under extended dry conditions, such as in 2019, when nearby Binnaburra burned and the groundwater at Tamborine Mountain became depleted. This highlights the need for ongoing monitoring. Our sampling covered multiple catchments and elevations across the plateau, from 700 metres to 1,000 metres elevation. This network captured groundwater in both basalt and rhyolite formations, linking geology and hydrology. The spatial spread of the monitoring supports understanding for the entire plateau, rather than just isolated points. And this plateau-wide coverage means that the dataset is nationally significant. Through our drilling and assessment of the bores that have been drilled previously up at Springbrook, we have identified that fractured basalt and rhyolite are the main aquifer zones where you can find the groundwater. The fractures that occur at the top and the bottom of the lava flows up at Springbrook provide vital pathways for groundwater movement. Understanding this structure allows us to map where the groundwater moves, how it recharges, and where it emerges. This knowledge is essential for understanding groundwater connections with surface water and deep-rooted vegetation, and also for managing extraction. We've got multiple lines of evidence showing close connection between groundwater and surface water. These graphs here show the groundwater level trends on the top graph and the surface water level trends on the bottom graph, both of them versus rainfall. So what we can see in these graphs is both groundwater and surface water respond very quickly to rainfall, and the timing of the responses is almost identical in some cases between the groundwater and surface water. So this indicates a very close connection between groundwater and surface water, and very responsive aquifers up at Springbrook under these very wet conditions. It's very different to other parts of Queensland, and it's really important evidence of these connections.
So, can I ask a question just about that bit?
Yeah.
So basically what you're saying is that the water's only there when it's raining, or could be only there when it's raining. Like the rain actually is the water coming out of the sky is where the water, there's not a lot of springs.
That's where it comes from, yeah.
Yeah, okay, all right,
yeah.
Cool. Mm-hmm. Sorry, that's a very layman question, I'm sorry.
All good, thank you. So in terms of evidence for the connectivity, the other source of evidence we're looking at is the water chemistry. The groundwater chemistry revealed distinct fingerprints for each aquifer type, so we can tell the difference in the water chemistry between the basalt and the rhyolite. Using these fingerprints, we can trace groundwater sources feeding springs and ecosystems. This level of resolution is new for the region and provides solid evidence base for water policy and management. So we can now identify source aquifers when we go and collect surface water samples up at Springbrook. Radon, a naturally occurring radioactive isotope, was used to detect groundwater discharge to surface streams. We found that elevated radon concentrations occurred in bores that were drilled into the rhyolite, and this is a new insight of international significance. The radon concentrations were found to fluctuate with rainfall. This again provides some supplementary evidence of the rapid recharge pathways for that rainfall getting down to groundwater, and of the connections between deep and shallow groundwater formations.
Thanks, Lucy. So to make sure that we can communicate a lot of this complex information, QUT's helped out by producing a visualization tool, and it also helps us ensure transparency for the data. And it's available online through QUT's interactive visualization tool, which you can see a snapshot of on the slide here. This allows council regulators and the community to see the results situated within the landscape. The QUT visualisation team are providing ongoing updates to integrate our final report findings, and will likely do so if we are to continue work up there. The SGI findings have already informed state and local government decision making. They contributed to the state government's moratorium on new commercial groundwater extraction at Springbrook. So for the period of the study, they didn't allow new extraction. And in the forthcoming water plan Gold Coast, there will be permanent exclusion zones for Springbrook and Tamborine for commercial extraction because of the evidence provided through this study. The data will support that permanent regulation through that state water plan, and it will continue to inform our city plan policy, contributing to World Heritage reporting as well at the state level. The SGI clearly shows these systems are too sensitive for one-off studies. Ongoing monitoring is essential. There's lots of things that we need to be able to detect and react to and respond to when change is required. The SGI has established a robust monitoring network. It's established baseline data and conceptual models for Springbrook, its hydrology and its ecology. The evidence shows that Springbrook aquifers, streams and ecosystems are tightly coupled and sensitive to change. So what's next? The next step is to transition this work into what's known as a Critical Zone Observatory. This is an international system that's used worldwide. CZO for short. In plain terms, the CZO is a long-term outdoor laboratory that monitors how water, soil, vegetation and climate interact. The critical zone being the thin, living layer of the Earth from the near atmosphere above the tree canopy all the way deep into the groundwater. QUT will lead the science, and TERN, which is our Terrestrial Ecosystem Research Network, our national body, will manage the national integration and open data. The city will remain a key partner ensuring local relevance and application. Springbrook would be Australia's very first subtropical montane CZO, linking our data into national and global networks.
The Critical Zone Observatory will build on our SGI foundations, monitoring rainfall, fog, groundwater, soil moisture, vegetation water use, and biodiversity through environmental DNA and ecoacoustics. It also adds a new technology layer through Australia's IoT Water Hub, which is led out of QUT, and is developing low-cost sensors and live dashboards. These tools can be repurposed across the city operations, including infrastructure, flood risk, and asset management.
Beyond environmental data, this partnership delivers our city tangible value. It creates a local skills pipeline through research placements. Higher degree by research students can be placed within the city, and we have a program to do that, and also within industry. It embeds Indigenous cultural water knowledge in monitoring and storytelling, which is also good for eco-education and nature-based tourism, drawing visitors and students from around the world. And it positions the Gold Coast within a global science network, bringing visibility and credibility to our environmental leadership. Lastly, this collaborative relationship established through the SGI has allowed the CZO to progress incrementally using shared in-kind resources. So for the last year, we haven't really had city funding contributing to this, but our co-collaborators have been driving it. Because of the nationally and internationally significant nature of the monitoring and research opportunities through the CZO, the program is eligible to seek research grants, a process that is currently being pursued by QUT. The city currently contributes with in-kind support mainly myself and other officers, incorporating the co-design of the CZO, scientific monitoring expertise and fieldwork. Opportunities for further support can be explored as they arise. Thank you for allowing us to present on this incredible project, which has been our privilege to work on over the last 4 years.
Thanks, Grant. Awesome. Does anyone have any questions? I had a few, but no. My question is actually for Dr. Lucy. I'm interested in obviously QUT's been up there a fair bit, and we didn't really get an introduction about who you are. So I've got first question. Okay. Tell us a little bit about who you are.
Yeah.
And part two is, I can't imagine all of this research has been done just by you. What sort of involvement has QUT in bringing students and other researchers up to the mountain?
Yeah.
So talk to both of those things.
Yes. Through the chair. I've been working in groundwater for a bit over 20 years. I've been at QUT for 10 years. I lead the groundwater research program there, and I also teach into environmental science. Another role I have at QUT is leading the capstone project, so final year projects, and I always link my teaching and my research. So I've brought hundreds of students up to Springbrook. Right. A lot of the work that we've done when we haven't had much funding has been very much through students. So I've had honours, masters and PhD students all working primarily at Springbrook, and that's how we've done all this work. So that's, as well as I've had a full-time research assistant for the 4 year that we had the funding as well. So that combination of having that funding for a research assistant and all of those students involved is how we've been able to do the work, and that's something I'm still continuing. So I've just taken on 3 more students this year, right. 2 honours and a PhD to keep the work going and then focus on that visualisation, smart sensors, all the things that we're trying to keep adding in.
That's great. Awesome. Any other questions? I have a slightly changed recommendation if you wouldn't mind bringing it up. And the motion effectively is just the officer recommendation, but noting also philanthropic funding, which has already been, there's already been some pursuit of that, and also like to allocate a $40,000 allocation in next year's local area work, subject to budget adoption, for the incredible community benefit that's been in my community. Obviously, having so many students up there and so much research going on, and also, the reality that, in the academic space, this has been a globally relevant and reputational piece for the Springbrook community. I think I've been really proud of that. So I wanted to kind of make a contribution, and also note that Grant, you and I talked back in 2020 after we had that long period of drought, and allocating some local area works just to start the conceptual idea about this was really good. So I think it just kind of brings that full circle. The fact that the catalyst of this was a small contribution from local area works, and the idea that this next stage can be, again, a catalyst can be a local area works contribution.
Through the chair, I just want to comment. We really did start with nothing. So there was a $5,000 allocation from Councillor Tozer to put a logger in, and then through collaboration and networking, we were able to build a support base. And then council saw fit to also contribute funding to allow the bulk of the work to happen, and then others jumped on board as well. So it steamrolled.
Yeah, the fact that it ended up in a collaborative effort of over $4 million worth of contribution, I think is really exciting for the area, and a great example of different levels of government and the university sector working together for what is now a world-leading, or potentially a world-leading attraction when it comes to groundwater research. Do I have a sec? Oh, do you have a question? Yeah.
Yeah, just questioning why you need to put the number 3 in when we will do local area works as part of the normal process in the budget.
No, because at any committee someone can allocate that, and I asked the team whether they would be supportive of a divisional allocation, and they said yes.
Yeah, no, not the decision for you to invest, but the local area works funding happens through the budget process anyway. It feels like that's just an addition that you can do anyway.
It's a public commitment that I would like to make for it, and then it will be subject to budget adoption when that time comes.
So that's just a message rather than an actual decision.
Yeah, this committee can't allocate budget, but can signal allocations, and that's what we're intending to do here.
Sure.
But a second, yeah? Councillor Marshall will second that. Does anyone have any other questions or would like to speak against the motion? Please.
Chair, again, just through you, congratulations. This is phenomenal work. It's even to get to that level of being able to identify and work with state government and others to work out where our future would it be boring operations? Is that the correct terminology as far as the going down
Through
into
the chair drilling?
Not boring.
Yeah, not boring. That's what I was like. I don't know if that's the technical word. Yeah.
wrong
But just
sort of
to be
boring.
able to identify where that can actually take place and exclude certain areas, I think is phenomenal work. So kudos on the work that you've done.
It's great. Awesome. Any other comments? No? All those in favour? Motion is carried. Dr. Lucy Grant, thanks for coming and presenting today. Andrew, thank you. The next item on the agenda is our Water Environment Monitoring Program Baseline Assessment Report. Is that still you, Grant? No. Different team. Sorry.
Good morning, councillors. Thank you for the opportunity to come and present to you today. We'll be continuing the water theme with our presentation and paper. Where Grant and Lucy just presented a really detailed investigation at Springbrook, we'll be taking a bit of a step back in a citywide perspective about looking at waterway health across the city. And specifically, we'll be talking about the Water Environment Monitoring Program and the baseline report that we've pulled together using the first 6 years of data from this program. This paper actually presents the culmination of a number of years of work from the team, and we're very excited to present this to you today. And it's also a follow-on from the Recreational Waters Monitoring Plan that was presented to this committee late last year as a recommendation to come back and talk a bit more about our ecological monitoring. Okay. All right. So at that committee last year, the environmental health team presented what the work the city is doing around our public health monitoring. But today we'll be spending a little bit of time talking about our ecological waterway health and specifically the baseline assessment report under the WEMP program. Where our monitoring programs under public health follows the Public Health Act. For our ecological water monitoring programs, this sits under the Environmental Protection Act, and specifically the Environmental Protection Water and Wetland Biodiversity Policy. This policy actually sets out a very robust and somewhat complex framework for managing water quality across Queensland, and it starts by defining water types for every waterway across the state. So a water type is really an allocation describing where it sits in the landscape, so a lowland fresh area or a mid-estuary, for example. And then under those water types, each waterway is prescribed an environmental value. And these are kind of characteristics or qualities of a waterway that are required to protect environmental and community values for those systems. And there are 12 in total, and they cover things like ecosystem services, aquatic ecosystems, irrigation, visual amenity, agriculture. And then under each of those categories, we also have a management goal. So some waterways that are in really good condition and have really high environmental value, they're prescribed as high ecological value. And for those systems that have some disturbance, they're categorised as either slight, moderate, or highly disturbed. And then finally, under all those categorisations, we get to prescribing specific guideline values for typical water quality parameters. And these are called water quality objectives. So, how the city is working towards the requirements under the EPP is through our ecological water monitoring framework. The city's actually been monitoring for probably about 30 years, which is a really long legacy of ecological water quality monitoring. And this program really grew out of the need and desire for the community to understand what the city was doing to understand our waterway health. And it kind of grew organically over time and got quite big and complex. So about 7 years ago, we undertook a major review of the program, and we kind of separated it into these key programs you see on the screen so that they had a really clear purpose and objectives, and that there was no duplication. It improved operational efficiency and reporting. So the key program that we deliver to understand our ecological waterway health is the Water Environment Monitoring Program, and I'll be spending a bit of time talking about that one today. And this one really helps us to have a look at the waterways and how they're performing. We also have an incident monitoring program. So this one is a reactive program that's activated in response to a waterway issue like a fish kill or a pollution incident, and that one's delivered in partnership with our environmental health team. We also have targeted monitoring programs, and Springbrook was an epic example of a targeted monitoring program. And these programs are really designed to look at a specific issue, a specific project. And for example, another one that we are implementing is looking at fish populations upstream and downstream of what the Luscombe Weir, or what was the Luscombe Weir. Constructed Lakes Monitoring Program. We deliver this one in partnership with our Infrastructure Gold Coast team, and this one is really about understanding water quality in our constructed lakes so that we can help to manage and maintain that into the future. And then finally, Infrastructure Gold Coast also delivers a Receiving Environment Monitoring Program, and this is around supporting our regulatory requirements for recycled water releases to the seaway. So a lot happening. But let's focus on the Water Environment Monitoring Program, which is what we're here to chat about today. This program is really about having an understanding of how our waters are tracking in terms of ecosystem health. It contains 4 key components: the Sentinel Water Quality Monitoring Program, macroinvertebrates, which I'll explain in a minute, continuous flow and water quality, and also catchment health assessments. So if we start at Sentinel Water Quality, this was our first program to kick off in 2018, and it actually has 57 sites, across the city, and they're monitored quarterly for typical parameters that in line with the EPP, so those water quality objectives. We have Sentinel macroinvertebrates. So macroinvertebrates is a big word for water bugs. So little tiny invertebrates that live part or all of their life in waterways and just happen to be a really good indicator of waterway health.
If they're alive, the water's good. If they're dead, the water's bad?
Yes, so if we don't find water bugs, we know there's a problem.
Right.
And the different types of water bugs we find have different tolerances to water quality and habitat availability. Okay. So we can kind of figure out what's going on by who's present and who's not.
Got it.
And that program has been running since early 2019, and we monitor that at 24 freshwater sites across the city. So they're only found in freshwater. And these 2 programs, we now have 6 years of data, and these 2 programs are what we've used to inform the baseline report. And we've compared all of the results from those 6 years against the water quality objectives. But we also have a continuous flow and water quality trial happening at the moment. So we've got 5 gauges which look at continuous water levels and water quality across 5 catchments. But this program is a little while off operational, and it's challenging to implement because we've got sensors in waters and requires a lot of upkeep and monitoring. Catchment health assessments. This is where Sentinel Water Quality and Sentinel macroinvertebrates gives us a bit of a pulse check of what's happening in our catchments. This is a really deep dive into understanding what's happening in our catchments. We undertake a catchment health assessment at 1 catchment each year on a rolling basis. And we undertake all the typical water quality and macroinvertebrate sampling, but we also add more sites, and we do it on a monthly frequency rather than quarterly. And depending on the values and pressures that exist within those catchments, we also might pick up additional parameters like herbicide, pesticide, or heavy metals. We've just completed our Broadwater Catchment Health Assessment, which was by far our biggest and most complex program we've delivered so far. And we'll actually be taking a pause on delivering monitoring under this program this year while we look at all the data from previous catchment health assessments so that we can analyse and interpret and report on that and start building it into our decision-making frameworks. So we'll be picking that program up again in the north in 2027. Okay, so data from the Sentinel Water Quality, macroinvertebrate, and also the Continuous Flows program is actually displayed and available through the city's webpage through this interactive map. So these are our Sentinel Water Quality monitoring sites, and if you click on any one of those icons, it will pop up with a little pop-up with the trend line of the last 18 months worth of data for each parameter. So all the data through those programs is available, and there's a data request form linked where people can actually request that data. As I said, it shows the last 18 months of water quality results, and it also provides a little bit of information about each parameter and what it measures. And this was actually a really big moment for our team to have this data presented live, because I guess before we started this program, we were working across lots of different spreadsheets, and it was quite complex and difficult, but we worked to procure and configure a data management system where we were able to actually manage our data in a really efficient way and push this information live to the community. But what this doesn't show us is, what does it mean? What is this data actually telling us about the condition and the health of our catchments? So that is why we have developed the WEMP Baseline Report. So we've actually taken all this information and data and analysed it and interpreted it and kind of communicated what it's telling us in terms of ecological waterway health. So it does provide a little bit of context and background information as well. It talks about our waterways and why they're important, particularly to the Gold Coast, how we monitor water quality through the WEMP program, what influences water quality, a bit about our catchments, and talks about the results against water quality objectives, and what the city is doing to improve and how the community can get involved in that. But before we get into those results, this is just a quick visual snapshot of what influences water quality, just so we can think about that when we're going through the results. So a really big driver of water quality is land use. Ultimately, what happens on the land impacts our waterways. So when we have really good, healthy, riparian, vegetated buffers, we slow and filter nutrients and sediments out of water and therefore reduce pollution, we minimise erosion, and we also support local biodiversity. When we don't have this healthy riparian buffer and a lot of hard surfaces, we see increased runoff, which picks up pollutants and also causes erosion. How we recreate and use our waterways also impacts them, where we have excessive boat use, where we don't manage our pets responsibly, where we're trampling over vegetation and down banks. This can all have localised impacts on our waterways as well. And if we jump to the bottom, agriculture at any scale, through application of fertiliser, allowing stock to enter waterways and trample banks, cause erosion, all impact our waterways as well. And the last one in the middle there is climate. So obviously our climatic conditions has a really big influence on our waterways. So in periods of low flow or drought, we can see waterways stop flowing, creating hot stagnant pools and see algal blooms. And conversely, when it rains, we can see a lot of sediments and nutrients and pollutants entering our waterways, particularly if we are not managing our land uses effectively. So with that in mind, let's get into the results. And this is just a little bit of a cheat sheet about how we're going to interpret them. So actually getting to this point under the EPP and all the requirements is actually quite complex. There's been, I think, over 14,000 data points compared against water quality objectives. So what we're seeing is a very rolled up version of those results. In the WEMP report itself, it's kind of reported at a site level as % compliance or how much we're achieving those water quality objectives. And it's also rolled up to a waterway level. What I'm going to show you now is actually to a catchment level. So green is good. 80 to 100% is excellent condition. 50 to 79% is still good condition. 20 to 49% is poor, and less than 19 is considered very poor. So let's have a look at what's happening in our catchments. If we start in the north, in the Logan Albert River, you can see the catchment area there is by far the largest on that list, but proportionally we only have a small component of this catchment which forms the northern boundary of our city. But according to the last 6 years of data, this catchment is in good condition. We do see some non-compliance of phosphorus throughout, but generally speaking, our water bog populations support sensitive species. There's just not as much diversity in the assemblage as we would expect. We do see some higher levels of non-compliance, particularly in our Sandy Creek catchments, which is a small tributary to the Logan River. Pimpamar River, we see a similar trend with our highest non-compliances around the lowland fresh upper estuaries, where we have flood mitigation kind of impounding water and altering flow. We see a lot of build-up of nutrient sediments and reduced dissolved oxygen. But in the upper catchment, we've got pretty good populations of water bugs. Coomera River, you can see, is not too far off excellent. What we see here is some issues with phosphorus around rural areas, and we do have some higher nutrients and lower dissolved oxygen in the upper estuaries around Saltwater Creek and Coomera Creek, which is actually quite typical for this position in catchments. But when we move to the Nerang River, we've got a bit of a different story. Still good condition, but we have a big dam in our freshwaters and we've got an extensive canal estate. So what we actually see is good water quality and water bugs in the upper catchment, a little bit of non-compliance with phosphorus as we move through rural areas, and then in those upper estuaries we do see some non-compliance, particularly with nutrients and chlorophyll A. So chlorophyll A kind of responds to the level of nutrients in the water. But lower Benogan and Mudgeeraba Creek also have some high nutrients as well. Broadwater Direct. This is not actually the Broadwater, this is Loaders and Bigger Creek. So these little catchments, unlike the other larger catchments on this list, they are fully contained within the urban footprint. So they are quite modified and impacted by urban development. But despite that, they're still performing reasonably well. They do have some non-compliance in the freshwater sections, but that improves dramatically as the tidal flushing increases as you get closer to the Broadwater. And Tallebudgera Creek and Currumbin Creek are our superstars. They're our best performing catchments, and they're actually listed as high ecological value, so they actually have more stringent water quality objectives than the other systems, but we're still performing really well against those. However, these much loved waterways are under increasing pressure from increasing population and a lot of recreational use. And then we get to our most southern and most smallest catchments, the Pacific Beaches. So Pacific Beaches is Coolangatta Creek and Flat Rock Creek. So these are our smallest and most heavily urbanised systems, which is reflective in the level of compliance. But just a bit of context around these results. Historically, these systems would have been intermittently open and closed coastal lagoons, so which means that they're not always connected to the ocean. So they would have received periods of flushing with the ocean, but otherwise they would have formed shallow coastal lake systems. Over time, modification through urbanisation has also really impacted these little catchments. We have sections of these creeks that have been converted to stormwater drains. We have minimal riparian vegetation. We've got a lot of urban runoff. We've got changes to their hydrological regime and waterway barriers, which all impact water quality and result in a lot of increase in nutrients and sediment and chlorophyll A and sometimes low dissolved oxygen. The city has undertaken a range of investigations around these particular systems and continues to work with its partners to look for options to improve their condition. We have done some riparian planting in the upper catchment of Flat Rock Creek through the Naturally GC program, and the Infrastructure Gold Coast team are looking at removing some of that sediment in the bottom lakes of Flat Rock Creek as well. But making material changes and improvements in these systems will be difficult. But just to put that into context, if you look at the catchment areas on the screen, these catchments represent a very small percent and proportion of our city's waterways, and overall, the vast majority of our waterways are performing well, and in some cases, excellent. But while it's important to understand waterway health, it's really important that we act. We don't want to monitor decline. So what we'd like to see over time as we continue to monitor is that we maintain good water quality despite having an increasing population, but we also improve where we can. And the city has a really important role in actually facilitating this. So the city, through its city plan, can set requirements around appropriate waterway buffers and setbacks to waterways, influence, erosion sediment control, also stormwater management. But we're also deliver a range of proactive programs that actively help us to improve waterway health, such as planting riparian vegetation along our conservation estate adjacent to waterways. We have a waterway barrier remediation program where we're looking to remove waterway barriers that are causing blockages to fish passage and natural flow. We're also delivering nature-based solutions to help us to minimise erosion and stabilise banks while also providing those ecosystem services for our waterways. And we will continue to deliver this monitoring program to ensure that we are tracking performance over time. Okay, so bringing it back to the baseline assessment report, and what we would like to see happen for this is we're seeking council endorsement to publish this on the webpage so we can share this with the community. So we could also, it would sit in the landing page where we've got the interactive map as a clickable link that people can read and explore at their own leisure. And moving forward, this is a really key step for us to have some baseline understanding of what's happening in catchment. But what we'd like to do is actually publish an annual update on how we're going over time. We propose to bring that to this committee each year before publishing it to the webpage.
Great.
So thank you for listening, and sorry I could talk about this all day, so apologies if I took too long.
Don't be sorry, it's good you didn't take too long, it's all good. Anyway, Councillor Gates has a question.
Yeah, I do. Thanks, Chair. Through you. Historically, the state government assessed the quality of our waterways and provided us with a ranking of the various catchments. Is this work done in consultation with the state or provided to the state, or do they do a similar body of work as we are doing within our organisation?
Through the Chair, great question, and the short answer is yes. They do have a regional monitoring program called the Ecosystem Health Monitoring Program. That's delivered through Healthy Land and Water. That program sits at a regional scale, so their intent is to report or provide a rating at a really high level, but it does not provide us with a local understanding of our waterways. For example, there are no sites for Flat Rock Creek or Coolangatta Creek. Tallebudgera and Currumbin are combined with only a couple of sites. So it doesn't provide us with that local level of information we need to understand and take management intervention towards our waterways. But we are in constant communication and working with the state government and Healthy Land and Water, and they're actually looking at reviewing how they engage and partner with councils to allow programs such as ours to link in with the HMP so that we can get a really good local and regional robust look at what's happening in terms of waterway health.
Any other questions? You're on. Councillor Martin.
Thanks, Chair. Thank you. Obviously pleased about Tally and Currumbin Creek rating highly. Just interested though in like the location of the monitoring, because I think that's quite upstream. So just interested in why perhaps testing more closer to like the ocean essentially, because obviously Tally, we've got a sewage treatment plant and just some of those testing. Just wondering if you could explain the locations.
Through the Chair, yes, and thank you. That's actually a point I forgot to make in responding to the previous question, is that our program is designed to complement that EHMP regional monitoring program. So where that program does not cover our freshwater catchments particularly well, it does have a pretty robust representation of our estuaries and the Broadwater. So we really pull those programs in together. And that's what we'll be looking at with the state government and Healthy Land and Water, is how we can better align reporting of both of those programs so we have a more comprehensive picture.
Okay. And follow on from that. So this, if I'm reading this right, so this is more about ecological health, and we've obviously got the water quality program, which is more of the sort of potential incident health. I'm just wondering, when this goes online, I guess how well the two types of testing to kind of the community, how will they understand kind of the difference?
Through the Chair, great question. There is a lot of commentary and narrative around what the WEMP baseline report and program looks at in terms of ecological health. It does not report on waterway incidents or investigations undertaken in response to pollution or fish kills, for example. But that is something we could potentially look at in the future, is how we integrate that into our reporting. This is our very first kind of baseline assessment report. It's the first time we've actually reported on this data to the community, so acknowledge that there probably are some gaps that we could seek to improve moving forward.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you, Chair. And I guess following on a little bit from Councillor Martin's commentary there, just Anna, thank you as always for the presentation. You do a great job. I've been fortunate enough to get a few briefings with you, which is great. Just following on, I guess, from that, back in October last year, from my recollection, was when we more or less endorsed some movement in that space of how we would be looking to project information to the public more broadly and more around, I think, what Councillor Martin was touching on with the human element, I guess, rather than the ecological element. Perhaps as far as consideration goes, I think it was New South Wales that did a red light, a traffic kind of signalling. I think that's kind of somewhat the direction we're moving towards as far as a platform. Whether this could be incorporated into that in the future, I don't know, but whether that could be food for thought, that's all I just wanted to pass on.
Through the chair, yeah, great suggestion. And the recreational water quality platform does actually have a traffic light system. They have comparably quite easier to interpret and predict guidelines than ecological health. For ecological health for each site, we have site-specific water quality objectives that have up to 10 individual parameters. So for each site, we would have up to 10 different traffic light reports. So we're just trying to work out how we best communicate that in a really simple way. But yeah, that's definitely the direction we'd like to head. Thank you. Thanks.
Cool. Is there any other questions? Councillor Castra, would you like to move the item, since it seems like you're probably most across it? Thank you, Councillor Castra. Moved. Seconded, Councillor Martin. Oh no, Councillor Curtis, do you want to sneak in? Councillor Castra moved it. Councillor Martin seconded it. Anyone else want to speak to the matter? Councillor Curtis.
Thank you, Chair. And noting the last time that you presented to us, it was about the recreational water quality launch of the website and that interface to the public. That was really, really well received, particularly within my community. We have a lot of water-facing properties and a great deal of interest in the health of our waterways. And I think they really, really valued the transparency that we're trying to deliver in that space. And I note that there is a great deal of interest in a few advocacy groups that want to see us enhancing our transparency and what we're presenting to the public. And I see this as being a wonderful step forward on that journey of making sure we're delivering that. So I commend the effort and thank you for the presentation today.
Thank you, Councillor.
It's great. Any further comments? I'll take the vote. All those in favour? Motion is carried. Thank you, Councillor Castro.
Thank you.
Great to have you with us. We've got the Climate Resilience and Sustainability Strategy update, and I think it's Abby who's presenting. Super.
Good morning, councillors. My name is Abby Issel. I'm a Senior Strategy Officer in the Climate Resilience and Sustainability team. Go. Today I'll give you an update on the Climate Resilience and Sustainability Strategy, including the key achievements and the projects in progress. Then I'll provide an overview of the Gold Coast Climate Risk and Adaptation Planning Project, including our upcoming targeted stakeholder engagement. So for a quick refresh of the strategy was adopted by Council in 2023 and the implementation plan was noted in 2025. Now, these documents establish our climate goals and the actions we need to take to reach them. We're currently at the beginning of the journey and we're in that building the foundations for change stage. This includes understanding our current risk and adaptation plans, our net zero emissions journey so far, and making plans for how we can become a more climate resilient and sustainable Gold Coast. Now, some of our key achievements of the strategy to date: for carbon accounting, we've adopted more accurate calculations, including activity-based emission factors for SEQ water, bulk water supply. We've been outlining pathways to net zero and identifying carbon credit saving opportunities. One of our more operational actions to reduce emissions is the low carbon concrete trial, where we implemented 500 metres of footpath in Benoa, saving 10 tonnes of carbon using low carbon concrete. That's equivalent to the annual emissions of 2 passenger cars and at no extra cost. We've begun to measure urban heat resilience and greening through the mapping of urban heat islands and current canopy cover. And we've been facilitating targeted knowledge building for senior leaders and city staff to upskill our staff and reduce our reliance on consultancies. And with the community, we've held 3 climate art workshops with over 60 community members, resulting in a community climate action quilt, which is now on display in our city libraries. So a bit of an update on our key projects that are currently in progress. Again, we're sticking with that foundation building projects. We're currently undertaking 2 climate risk assessments to inform adaptation planning across the organisation. And the reason we have 2 is because they're just broken down into different areas of risk to get a better overview. Now, of course, the city is already doing a lot to address climate risk, such as coastal management, our disaster preparedness, and land use planning. These risk assessments will bring together all of this work and identify where we might have gaps and need further planning. Now, the first risk assessment on the screen is looking at our city assets and services. So this is internal facing, and it's a high-level first-pass assessment of our key risks to our most critical assets and services. The outcome from this will be a roadmap with key steps to improve our climate risk maturity across the organisation. And of course, that will be developed in collaboration with the enterprise risk team and the strategic asset team. Now, the other risk assessment underway is focused more on the local government area. So one of them is more internal facing and the other one is looking more externally. In particular, we'll be working with key sectors such as water, transport, health, and more to build a collective understanding of risks that each sector faces and really strengthen those relationships. Finally, for carbon accounting, we have been tracking Scope 1 and 2 emissions, which if, like me, you're not a carbon accountant, those means the direct emissions that we produce from things such as cars and the electricity that we use. Now, we're also establishing processes to track Scope 3 emissions. So again, Scope 1 and 2 are the direct emissions that we produce. Scope 3 are the indirect emissions that occur in the value chain. So for example, the emissions produced to create the concrete that we may then use in a footpath. And we're also implementing measures to reduce those emissions in project and asset lifecycle planning. Now, I couldn't mention key projects here without touching on the Disaster Resilience Scorecard, which you'll hear about in the next presentation. We, of course, are working closely across our teams to ensure we are strategically aligned, and all of this work under the strategy will contribute to improving our disaster resilience score. Now, I want to zoom in a little on the second risk assessment that I spoke about, which is focused on the local government area and our key sectors. And I'm doing this today because we have targeted external stakeholder engagement coming up that we want to inform you of. Now, again, this is a foundational first-pass assessment. It'll establish the baseline for future detailed risk analysis, and it will guide long-term adaptation planning for the Gold Coast. Now, this project secured $200,000 funding from the Australian Government under the Disaster Ready Fund Round 2, and the city is providing in-kind contribution. This assessment is sector-based, meaning we're working with key utilities and major economic sectors. This approach follows best practice guidelines and recognises that climate change impacts will not occur in isolation, but they'll influence the networks and the systems that support the Gold Coast economy, communities, and critical services. Understanding these connections is vital for building resilience, prioritising adaptation actions, and developing a shared understanding of systemic climate risks with our key sectors. Now, the key sectors that this assessment focuses on are essential services such as energy, transport, water, waste, and telecommunications, and our key economic sectors, finance, health, and tourism. Now, these sectors were selected as they provide essential services, they sustain economic productivity, and they also offer early visibility of systemic risks and interdependencies. Additionally, we've had interest from sectors such as health in sharing learnings between the city and working with us to build resilience. Now, again, this is a first pass assessment, meaning it's very high level. We're not getting into the nitty gritty with this. The main focus for this targeted engagement is to strengthen relationships between the city and sectors and within the sectors themselves. And of course, it's to share learnings, noting that all the sectors and ourselves are all at different points in our climate risk maturity journey, and we have lots to learn from each other. Again, this assessment aims to identify potential shared risks and inform future approaches to climate risk management with our key sectors. So what the proposed target engagement program, will run from March to June this year. And to do that, we'll be using existing city networks and relationships. And it, of course, will be guided by the city's approved external engagement framework. Our approach will be targeted, it'll be tailored and risk aware. We will begin internally with a pre-engagement briefing, working with teams to identify existing relationships and the best approach for engagement with each sector. Once the project launches, we will share the CRVA, which is the Climate Risk and Vulnerability Assessment, with each sector. This includes a desktop review of publicly available information on potential risks. We will then bring together the sectors to discuss interdependencies, share learnings, and identify any outlier risks. And all of this will be facilitated by climate change experts in Formed City. Now, this engagement is targeted and it's exploratory. It's intended to prompt conversation rather than commit participants or the city to specific actions. The goal is to produce risk insights, agreed priorities, and a clearer understanding of roles and responsibilities. Tangible outcomes will include the Climate Risk and Vulnerability Assessment for key sectors, a Gold Coast adaptation plan, and a monitoring, evaluation and learning framework for adaptation, so we can track how successful our actions really are. So what are the benefits to the city? Well, this project will provide a clearer understanding of how city assets and services depend on our external essential sectors. It'll look at how infrastructure systems rely on each other and the possibility of cascading impacts. It'll also look at how climate disruptions may impact major economic sectors such as finance, health and tourism. And most importantly, how the city and key sectors can work together to reduce risks and enhance our resilience across the Gold Coast. Again, our main goal with this targeted engagement is to build that shared ownership of climate risks, strengthen partnerships, and lay the foundations for long-term collaborative adaptation. Thank you.
Thanks, Abby. Any questions? Do I have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Wilkinson. Seconder? Thank you, Councillor Curtis. Councillor Wilkinson, do you want to speak to it?
Thank you, Chair. No, look, in particular, I think it's great. I think you've given a really high-level overview of kind of where we're at. I think that's really great. I look forward to kind of getting some of those briefings in due course, especially around things like our carbon accounting. I think that's really interesting, and the way in which we actually play a role in that, I think, will be fascinating, because my understanding, and I was going to say through Brett, you probably know this better than most, I would think that the federal government does a lot of that heavy lifting when it comes to the accounting side of things for emissions and how we look at that carbon capturing. I don't know if there's any grants that also are available through federal government or state government, perhaps, which I think would be worth exploring. But look, overall, I think if we're making efforts to reduce our carbon emissions, I think as a city, I think that's a really good thing. I think the infrastructure trials have been really fascinating, and I think that there's opportunity there across the city for that further. And yeah, look forward to seeing this one progress, and yeah, welcome any future reports to come.
Great. Anyone want to speak against? Are you happy with those being closing remarks? All those in favour? Motion's carried. Thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
Next one up is our Disaster Resilience Scorecard project update. And Lisa, is that right? You're presenting today? Great, awesome. Morning, Mark. Thanks for a quiet Christmas.
Very well.
Yeah, it was great. Other than Southport, it was excellent. Yeah. You're up.
Good morning, Chair and councillors, and thank you for the opportunity to provide an overview of one of the Disaster and Emergency Management Unit's strategic projects, the Disaster Resilience Scorecard. As you know, Council has committed in its 2022-2027 Council Plan to work with the community and stakeholders to strengthen the city's resilience and improve the disaster resilience for City School. The Gold Coast is exposed to a range of hazards: flooding, bushfires, tropical cyclones, severe storms and heat waves. And climate change is only amplifying the frequency and severity of these events, highlighting the need for a strategic, future-focused approach to building resilience. From a local government perspective, prioritising disaster risk reduction activities is therefore not only a protective measure, but a strategic imperative, reducing long-term costs associated with disasters, safeguarding community well-being, and ensuring planning, infrastructure and services remain resilient in the face of increasing and more complex hazards. For all of these reasons, the City is adopting the Disaster Resilience Scorecard framework, and in doing so is leading the nation from a local government perspective as the only city to benchmark and align our disaster resilience against this internationally accepted standard.
So can you pause just there? Does that mean states aren't doing it either, or is it normally states that are doing it? We're just a big city that are doing it.
It's my next slide. It's an international framework that's been developed by the United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction, designed specifically for local governments.
Great. Okay.
To measure their disaster risk reduction.
Go on.
Developed by the United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction for use by local governments. It's aligned with the Paris Agreement and the Sendai Framework. Its application within the city reflects the national direction first established by the Council of Australian Governments, whose commitment to resilience set the strategic alignment with the Sendai Framework and the foundation for Australia's disaster risk reduction systems. The scorecard itself is a structured self-assessment measurement tool that will help the city to track, monitor and evaluate the effectiveness of projects, activities and initiatives and their impact on city disaster resilience levels. There are 10 essentials that make up the scorecard and operationalise the principles of the Sendai Framework at the local government level. The essentials include a series of questions, indicators and ratings that are broadly grouped across 3 key areas of governance and leadership, planning and risk assessment, and response and capacity building. Phase 1 of the project has focused on establishing a baseline understanding of internal city initiatives and projects directly or indirectly contributing to our disaster resilience levels across 5 hazards that the city is most vulnerable to. Our 10 essential leaders are general manager sponsors across city departments who represent single points of accountability, supporting project objectives and providing input to ensure projects and business unit plans are aligned to the scorecard and disaster risk reduction activities, working to integrate resilience actions into annual budget bids and city risk registers, informed by the endorsed council risk appetite statements. They will embed resilience into day-to-day operations and future planning, using project insights to inform decision-making and to prioritise resource allocation and investment to enhance resilience, working toward a one city approach to building disaster resilience. So during the past 12 months, the city has worked to establish its first evidence-informed rating. Based on a citywide robust process, the city's 2025 disaster resilience score has been established as an index rating of 42%, an improvement on the 2024 city score of 38%. Ratings have been established for each of the scorecard 10 essentials, providing an overall assessment of the city's current resilience levels in terms of our response readiness, understanding our risks and critical assets and service impacts, and our community infrastructure, economic and environmental readiness and ability to resist, respond and recover from events. The assessment and our resulting rating of 42 has provided significant insight into our disaster risk reduction activities and highlighted opportunities where uplifting capabilities will have the greatest impact on our resilience levels. So the 2025 assessment and our project activities has established that the city has maturing response readiness, guided by our local disaster management plan and our sub-plans, a local disaster coordination centre designed and operated at importance level 4 with sufficient staffing capacity for single event activations. The city has strong flood intelligence and asset programs underway with protective infrastructure aligned to legacy standards. We also have expanding communication channels supported by community disaster plan workshops, partner networks including Surf Life Saving Queensland and the Gold Coast Faith Community Disaster Network. And we have our disaster dashboard, GC alerts and the city app supporting over 200 outreach touchpoints. As a result of the 2025 assessment, the following have been identified as focus areas where uplift will contribute to increased resilience levels. So these include improving and implementing coordinated and integrated governance structures, climate risk integration, embedding climate adaptation measures into planning, defining critical infrastructure and prioritisation tiers, expanding alert and communication coverage during non-emergency periods, standardising relief and recovery process frameworks for smoother implementation, enhancing societal and business resilience via targeted programs, aligning zoning with hazard risks to strengthen urban development planning and controls, and creating centralised data and knowledge management protocols to support informed decision-making. In the short term, the following priority activities are currently progressing across the city with the objective to enhance resilience levels and where the greatest impact have been identified. So these include supporting household and property resilience, which currently is happening through Phase 2 of Program AIR, continued community level planning and support, improvements to critical infrastructure and asset resilience, noting infrastructure resilience underpins the city's ability to maintain essential services during and after disasters. And by prioritising these resilience indicators and embedding climate risk into capital planning, the scorecard will track and monitor infrastructure systems, including water, energy and transport, ensuring they're future-proofed against compounding hazards. And finally, we're enhancing real-time data integration and tracking activities to support informed decision-making in planning for and responding to events. The city score will be reassessed annually to monitor and track the effectiveness of these uplift activities. In terms of funding disaster risk reduction, it's widely acknowledged that disaster events carry significant costs. The scorecard aligns with the city's conservative risk appetite and will contribute to a reduction in risk across prevention, preparedness, response and recovery by aligning proactive funding strategies and allocation for critical assets. It will strengthen citywide resilience by providing a structured framework to identify systemic vulnerabilities and integrate disaster risk reduction into all planning decisions. The 2025 assessment noted that city disaster funding and insurances are well understood and managed, with projects including Program AIR supporting proactive investment into mitigation and resilience, reducing that reliance on costly and reactive recovery. In addition, funding opportunities are available and continue to be investigated via the Queensland Reconstruction Authority, the Disaster Ready Fund and QCoast. The scorecard will continue to establish transparent reporting and ongoing review of external funding opportunities, supporting a reduction in long-term costs. Sharing this video to demonstrate some of the real impacts of recent severe weather on the Gold Coast. noting that while TC Alfred caused significant disruption, it could have been far worse had it struck as the predicted Category 2 cyclone, with many suggesting that we dodged a bullet. Events like TC Alfred, the 2024 Christmas derecho, and recent flooding remind us that extreme weather is becoming more frequent and intense. We cannot afford to be reactive, and preparation is no longer optional. So, to further illustrate the potential risk posed to the Gold Coast, an important piece of research was undertaken by Geoscience Australia, James Cook University and the 6 South East Queensland Councils, the Severe Wind Hazard Assessment for South East Queensland. This research modelled 5 credible cyclone scenarios, with scenario 1 up on the screen, a Category 3 cyclone event which shows extensive impact to the Gold Coast, far beyond what TC Alfred delivered. This is the reality that we are planning for now. This research, combined with lessons from recent events, are fundamentally shifting our approaches. For example, traffic modelling has shown that large-scale evacuation of the Gold Coast is not viable, and that resilience must be built into our city, our infrastructure and our community, including identifying where people can safely shelter, how services continue to operate, and defining clear triggers that guide timely decisions to protect the community. As a city, we have moved from a limited understanding of our resilience to a robust, evidence-based assessment of our resilience levels using the scorecard. For the first time, we have a clear picture, a practical roadmap aligned with global disaster risk reduction indicators to monitor and track progress and strengthen the city's ability to withstand future disaster events. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks heaps, Liesl. Any questions about disaster resilience? Councillor Curtis.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the presentation. Mine's actually a hyper-local one, so please don't feel pressured on the spot to answer this. But I noticed on page 383, talking about the safeguard and natural buffers, one of the priority focus areas is to promote successful examples of developments, and the one that's listed is Harbour Shores, which is one of the biggest development under construction in Division 4 at the moment. And I was hyper aware of them being quite exceptional leaders in the development, being a 6-star green development, but I was less aware of the impact that had on disaster resilience, and I'd really welcome that detail about how they're leading in that space and why it is our example in this report. But like I said, I can just grab that offline if it's not available now.
Through you, Chair, be happy to take that offline, and we'll get the relevant detail. The granular details, as Liesl covered, was from all 7 departments. So, yeah, be more than happy to follow that up, Chair, and provide that through. Thank you.
I had a question about the funding sources for grants. There was QCoast and the DRF and the QRA. Are they all state resources or are they federal resources?
A mixture of both, Chair. So we can see, for example, at the moment we've got a position funded in my branch that is funded Commonwealth and state, and a position just by the state. So depending on which type of grant it is, it's typically, I'd say probably well over 60% now of both state and Commonwealth at various different levels, but some are just state, like our Get Ready program is just state government.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Would anyone like to move the item? No? I'll move it. Councillor Marshall will second it. This is really important work, and I know that Mark and Liesl and your whole team is doing a great job in aligning our nation-leading disaster resilience piece to the international framework, and it's great seeing the UN's program for local governments being the model that we're using. Hopefully we can be not only preparing our city well, but also setting a standard for other cities in Australia. It's awesome. Anyone want to speak against disaster resilience? No. All those in favour? That motion is carried. We have some. We have one general business item, and I'm going to move it. But I need a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Curtis. And I'm going to cede my opening remarks to Councillor Taylor, who's asked me to move it on his behalf.
Thank you, Chair, for moving this on my behalf. Look, just a bit of the context. Over the last 12 or 18 months, 2 years, I've been getting a lot more increased concerns from residents about midges around particularly summertime. And when I started looking into the program, what came clear that there had been a shift in our program from around 2 years ago, give or take, where the program at the time used to look at treating the sand at particular times during the year, once a year, and then they'd have fogging programs throughout the year as well to help manage the midges. The treatment in the sand was to do with treating the eggs at the initial stage, and the fogging is to hopefully mitigate the live or active midges. So very disappointing to hear that the program had been cut back. The treatment of the sand is not being carried out. My understanding is now. So I would like to bring a general business item coming forward so that we can address where we're at in relation to that program moving forward. So,
I wanted to ask, who is the representative for the Regional Mosquito Management Group, or does it still exist?
I believe it's me, but it always conflicts with water, waste and energy. So I have made a suggestion that it perhaps go to another representative, but I haven't heard an update. But I'll follow that up.
Okay, we'll follow that up. Yeah, maybe before council. It'd be good if you haven't been able to attend. That group is actually an important group for us to have a city representative beyond just the officers being across the regional. As you might imagine, midges and mosquitoes don't really pay attention to local government boundaries, and so that collective, collaborative approach is important. Councillor Martin.
Just a question, Chair. I think from the GBI it says it, but this is whole of city, right? Because I obviously have some similar concerns.
Just around Councillor Taylor's house, as far as I can see. No, just checking the whole of the city. Sorry.
The midges are not paying attention to those divisional boundaries either. So
no, they don't. Exactly right.
Would love to make sure that that's whole of city.
Whole of city, yeah.
Thank you.
Brett, we have that assurance that it's a whole of city report we're looking for? Absolutely, Chair. Thank you. Councillor Gates.
Can I just ask, please, through you, Chair, how that would occur if a program that's been operating in the city for decades to control biting midge, how it could just disappear without councillors representing those areas being aware?
It's a good question. Brett, did you want to address the discontinuation of the midge program? Or is that something that you want to...
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Chair. I understand the larval treatments discontinued about approximately 2 years ago. There's a couple of reasons for that. One is that the larvae of midges breed a couple of centimetres to a couple of inches below sand levels. So to treat them, you had to have high pressure jets on the back of boats that would inject somewhat toxic chemicals into the sand to try and treat the larval eggs. Over many years, we were tracking the efficacy of that treatment, and it showed it was having very little impact. This is not a local Gold Coast thing. This is everywhere in the world that tries this, and Florida's probably leading the way. In America, almost every jurisdiction has stopped that treatment because it's not effective. And what we pivoted to was more adult treatments, which is misting, fogging during periods of either community complaints through councillors or through our own mapping and surveys of adult numbers. And that is the way we're currently treating it. So it's not so much about stopping services, it's about pivoting our resources to undertake programs that have a better impact.
It occurs to me that the substance of this report would hopefully address that question more comprehensively as well. Councillor Gates. Councillor Taylor, you raised your hand, but Councillor Gates has the floor. Are you okay for...
I'm sorry, I was not aware of any of that. I think possibly
hence the GB, I think.
Yeah, if... I mean, the canals have been sprayed for decades.
Yes.
And I know, I don't live on a canal, but I know that residents have always looked forward to those treatments because of the impact of the biting midge. I wasn't aware that there's been further research that shows better treatment methods.
Yeah.
So
to me, I'm hoping that will form part of the report of Mr. Baker. Yes, Tim.
Thank you, Chair, for your indulgence. So just to be clear, there's been no cut in the money that's gone to that area. The money is still being there. The service has changed. So just need to be a little bit careful with the word cut. There's been a change to the service based on the science.
Yes.
The money has not been taken away as a savings. That's not what this is about.
Yeah,
both
the practice and the funding will form part of this report.
Yeah, correct. But I just thought it was important that, given we're in open and there are thousands of people at home watching this, that I should make it very clear that there's been no cut in the money, that the science has changed and the approach has changed, and also there were significant work health and safety issues about the way that we were doing it at the time. But that's why I'm fully supportive of the councillors, GBI and the city should go away, we should do the work and we should come back. But I just wanted to put on the public record that this wasn't an efficiency cut, it wasn't a drive for savings, it was based on the science and the work health and safety issues around it at the time.
Gotcha. Councillor Taylor, you have a question?
Oh, yeah, a question, but a bit of a statement as well, because my concern was that the boats that were being used had some challenges as well. And I'm really interested, that's why the GB's here, to get to the bottom of why the changes were made and what were the alternative actions that could be put in place, other than just saying we're going to fog when there's concerns with local residents. My understanding, there could be other opportunities to have a better program if there was concerns with what we may have landed now. And I think from my perspective is us not being aware of the significant shift from what we did do to what we're doing now.
Any other?
No, but between now and when this
point of clarification here from Councillor Gates, and just correcting the CEO that there's not 1,000 people watching, there's only 28.
We'll get to 1,000 now, because I've said there will be. I'll just direct the staff to turn on their screens immediately, please.
We can't discount the fact that there could be thousands of people watching each of those 28 screens.
That's right. That's right.
So, I appreciate there are probably groups across the city that gather together and watch our committee. It is the best committee, so I appreciate that. Any other commentary about this general business item? Councillor Taylor, do you want to make any closing remarks?
Just that obviously the midgies have always been around in the city for a long period of time, and it causes challenges for a lot of residents when they're, enjoying the atmosphere of an evening, and that's when a lot of them come out. And the program has been so successful for such a long period of time, and it'd be really great to us to re-look into what changes could be made to get a better outcome for our residents right across the Gold Coast.
That's great. That's a closed debate. All those in favour of the GBI? Motion is carried. Is there any other matters that anyone wants to raise today? Meeting closed at 11:04. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Brett.